going to take a look here at the Caddie right-click Context Sensitive Menu. Now, as the name suggests, it's a menu which will change depending on what you're doing within Caddie. And we get the menu from the right-click, so just right-clicking there, and you'll notice that it follows you around. You have things like zoom box at the top of it, so we can zoom in on something. We still have access to all of the other tools within Caddie for zooming around. We can use the scroll keys and for panning and so on. And we can also use it, as we see, for selecting snap mode. So we've got freehand there, which will allow us to choose anywhere within our drawing. We can use auto snap, which we can configure. We can configure it to have any of these snap modes. Now, those are intersections where lines cross, for instance, construction lines only there, or any lines at all. Endpoints, we can configure the auto snap to have any of these things, but that's the subject for another tutorial. We also have option end. Now, option end will stop whatever we're doing, or if we're in the middle of a command that demands an option end, it will take us onto something, onto the next stage. It's useful, for instance, when you're drawing polylines. So draw a polyline there, and we want to, rather than close, looping it back to the beginning, we want to finish it there. We right-click, select option end. Okay, and picking the right-click context sensitive menu again, we'll find that we have down there on the next one, quick select. Now, quick select is a fabulous little tool. It allows us to interrogate our drawing, find bits, select them or unselect them, and just pick out things without having to go through the drawing with a fine tooth comb there. Now, the selection sets, now this is something that you'll see, we should be very familiar with Caddie before too long in working with it. Scope will give you everything that you can see on the drawing there effectively marked. We can pick marking as a way of tagging items. We can define a rectangle within the drawing, we can define a polygon. So here I'll choose polygon because again we can use that option end to close off the polygon. So on our drawing we can select maybe the circles that are drawn on maybe a particular layer or line style, or in this case we're going to pick colour. So we can have all the circles not equal in colour to red, or if you choose, equal to yellow. Choose OK. We draw our polygon around, so we choose the items we wish to include and exclude just by defining a polygon, right click and option end. And there we can see the selected circle. Now, once selected, we see we have grips, so we can pick up, in this case, the center grip and move things around. We can right click, and then we get more options because we have something selected. And we can copy it, for instance. So we pick a copy point, so if I purposely pick away from the circle, you see that it's locked onto that point. Right click will finish that and deselect it. If we pick 2 items, maybe 3 items, pick a few more items, we can also select with the enclosing rectangles, so we can pick that way. If we go from right to left, you'll notice we get a dotted selection box which will choose anything that is actually cut by the rectangle. Right click and go to object properties now, and also we have 13 objects here, 13 objects selected. If we pick another one, right click, object properties, we now have 14 objects, and again the 14 down there. You'll notice we have the object properties on flyout. It's also dockable here. If we choose maybe to alter all of the pens, we can do that. Choose all of the line styles, force everything onto a particular layer. Pick the box, you get a little drop down there. But we're not going to do that right now, we're going to select just the circles. So you see everything else has been deselected. We can now say let's change them all to maybe a green pen. We could have changed them all to a different layer. So we could put them on layer 0, for instance. We could choose whether they're visible or plottable. And then if we move back into our view here, I just press escape. We could press option end from the right click again. You'll see that they've now changed to green. When we select objects, we see we get the node points. Now, if we pick disconnected objects, we'll just move the 1 point. We can pick up by the center point there and just move them around. If we pick auto snap, okay, we'll drop that onto there and that onto there. We can also use it as a form of stretch. Now if we stretch without selecting the dimension as well, it won't affect the dimension. We'll just do an undo on that. If we select, and why not use the selection rectangle there, pick it and again move, you'll notice that the dimension also changes. Now with polylines, this one is in fact a polyline, whereas those are individual lines. You notice that we have the ability to pick up the node points. Okay, and just move it as an item. With other things, if we take hatch for instance, we have the ability to move the node points on the hatch. And in fact, in the hatch tools, which we'll see just a little further down on our menu, you have the option of adding in nodes and deleting islands and so on. But for the sake of our demonstration here, if we just pick up a few points, the center point again will actually move the hatch around. Press escape to deselect all. We can pick on a piece of text. We can move the text by its node point. We can right click and say edit that text. There we go, and OK that, and we'll see we get our piece of text there. We can select multiple items, right click, move, copy, rotate. So if we move those over there for instance, if we pick our little north point there, right click and say scale, we could scale it dynamically, so we could enter 0 there. We could pick a point about which to scale and a point on the edge of it and just make it smaller or larger. We can right click and say we'd like to rotate it. Again, we can enter an angle, a specific angle there, or we can hit 0. It now says indicate a point about which to rotate. Well, let's pick it about the center point. We can pick a point on it and then line it through with any point we choose. Okay. Incidentally, if you go to object properties here, you'll also see that scaling factor is incorporated there. So if we change that to say 4, again we'll see it scaling up, so we'll see the change reflected. Okay, press escape once again, and that leaves us with our selected objects. If we pick various items that we'd like to copy to the clipboard, right click, we see we have those copy to the clipboard options there, as well as the straight copy, which is useful for internal drawings. But if we copy it to the clipboard, we can copy it to an external application or between drawings. We pick an origin, and then when we hit paste, you see we get picked up by that origin the various things that we selected. One final thing to look at just at this stage, we have options for make. Now we can make items into blocks, we can make them into patterns, make them into symbols, so store them on the hard disk for bringing them back later. Patterns are in AutoCAD speak groups, so groups of objects, so not in a block but just connected by being within that group. We can also say make scope selected, so it will literally turn everything else off at that time. Scope tools for bringing things back, so we can either do layer display or all layers, but we can have an awful lot of functionality directly at our fingertips at the right click of the mouse.